This is Robert Littal for BlackSportsOnline.com, and I have a very, very special guest today, the legendary Jerry Izenberg, one of the greatest writers of any century. In any century, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to him today about a very special individual. He has a new book out called Larry Doby in Black and White: The Story of a Baseball Pioneer. It's about his good friend Larry Doby, the second person, black person to be allowed to play in Major League Baseball. It's an excellent book for the times, and definitely in the times where people need to know about the history of the game and the history of what these pioneers have done for it. So, Mr. Eisenberg, I really appreciate you coming on. Just tell us a little bit about your relationship with Mr. Doby, and what made you want to write this book about your good friend.
Well, Larry and I have been friends for, well, he's gone now, and that's hard too to think, but about 35 years. And it happened in a strange way. I've been in the business now for 74 years. I'm still writing my column and I'm still writing books. I didn't really know Larry that well. He had moved out of Patterson to Montclair. I had moved out of Newark to Montclair. Town is in between. But the Indians were not very good. And there wasn't any reason for me to go to Cleveland. And once in a while, when they played the Yankees, I wanted to see a Yankee. I'd go up there. I'd see him and he'd say, "Hi, Jerry." I'd say, "Hi, Larry." That was the relationship. Then in the late 70s, okay, my doorbell rings. Now, in those days, I sound like an old fart, but I believe it. We used to have blizzards with a capital B. When it snowed, it snowed. So I'm saying to myself, who the hell's going out in this? I open the door and there he is standing in front of me. And he looks at me and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Never mind that. What do you drink?" Well, in those days, I wasn't the fine, upstanding, moral 93-year-old man you see before you. So I told him the truth. If it's wet, I drink it. He said, "I'll be back at 7 with a bottle." And that was it. He walked off into the snow, a lone figure. The blizzard is going, hitting him in the head. And I'm saying, "What the hell? What does he want? What does he want?" And I'm saying, "Well, when he's not playing baseball, I'm still writing. So I must be his hometown columnist," was the Star Ledger's largest paper in New Jersey. Maybe I wrote something he didn't like. I don't know. What I didn't realize or didn't think about, because it was automatic to me, I always wrote about social issues. And so I got 4,000 letters attacking me when I started to defend Ali. And my three best friends in the world were Monty Irvin, who played with the Giants, and the Newark Eagles, black baseball team in Newark, Muhammad Ali, and eventually Larry became the third one. And Larry and Doby had been teammates in the semi-pros. And then at the Newark Eagles, they had been teammates. And that was a black team. And then Larry broke the color line in the American League. Monty broke the color line in Manhattan. And the way they broke the color line tells you that Larry had it so much harder. First of all, they did an intelligent thing with Jackie. They sent him to Montreal, which at that time there was no racial problems up there. They announced he was definitely coming the following year, and everybody was ready for it. When Monty walked into the Giant clubhouse with a guy named Hank Thompson, both black, of course, Leo DeRosa was the man. He could do something I couldn't do. I'm the only street kid in Newark who can't put these two fingers in his mouth and whistle. But DeRosa could. All of a sudden, the locker room stops, because that's the signal I want your attention. He said, "Listen, you see these two guys," he doesn't say they're black. I mean, the Giants had pretty good vision. They could tell that. And he said, "The guy on my left is Monty Irvin. He may become the greatest hitter in the history of this franchise. The guy on my right can play 5 different positions. I expect these two guys to help me win a pennant within 2 years. And if you don't like it, go screw yourself. But he didn't say screw. He challenged him to perform an anatomically impossible act. All right. So now here comes Larry. Larry, of course, was second. The American League was a bigoted. Look, the National League gets no awards from me for being free and understanding and liberal, but the American League was worse. You got to remember, as soon as Jackie made it, the National League said, "Well, you know, these guys could play a little bit. Let's get some, but not too many, but we'll get some." Larry was alone for a year and a half in the American League. He had a manager who I think hated him, or at least intensely disliked him. When he walked into the dressing room to be introduced, all Lou Woodlow, the playing manager, who was a shortstop and an all-star, said was, "Okay, Mr. Veck thinks this guy can play." He didn't say, "I think so too." He didn't say, "We think so." He just said, "Get in your lockers and introduce yourself." Larry starts to walk around. The first two guys turned their back and faced the wall. But the 25 players, 3 coaches, a manager, they're on the road, so there's no equipment manager. Of those guys, 5 guys shook his hand. 5 guys. Larry told me later he got the limp, hand, or he got nothing, or silence. But the guy who distinguished himself right then and there was my boyhood hero, Joe Gordon, who played for the Newark Bears International League team. Later played for the Yankees and then Cleveland, 13-year All-Star. He walks up to Doby and he says, "Boy, am I glad you're here." He says, "Now we're going to get some power in the lineup." And they shake hands. Well, now he goes and puts his uniform on, but he has to go in the men's room and do it because they're playing in Chicago. He hasn't got a locker yet. He wasn't listed on the roster. He looks in the mirror and he recalls what just happened to him. And he said, "Well, the hell with them. I'm here and I'm playing." And he walks through the empty locker room, up the little ramp that leads to the dugout steps. And I don't know if you've ever taken that walk, but if it's a day game, the light, the sun hits you right away when you get to the top step because you're coming out of darkness. And he hears this sound. Not applause, it's baseballs hitting gloves. The Cleveland Indians are warming up. Nobody will throw him the ball. He's standing there and he says, "Well, the hell with this." And he turns, and as he turns, somebody elbows him. Right away, up go the hands. Larry was tough. And it was Joe Gordon laughing. And he said, "Hey, rookie, you want to pose in profiling your new uniform or you want to get out there and warm up? Let's go." In the 8 years that they both were on the Indians, they never warmed up with anybody else after that moment. They never threw the ball to anybody else. Every game they warmed up. And the relationship went like this. He missed spring training the first year because he came July 5th. The second year, he's got his first spring training, and boy, that's a lovely surprise. He's in Tucson, Arizona, which is a Jim Crow town, right? He can't live at the hotel. He lives with a guy who works for the hotel where the team lives at, another black guy. Now, when they get a break, when he wants to go, well, he don't want to, when he had to go, in western part of Arizona, Phoenix, at Tucson, nobody else trained there. Colleges, High Corbett Field it was called. But when they had to play an exhibition game against the Giants, the Cubs, the White Sox, they had to go to the other half of the state. In the morning, they wouldn't get breakfast. In the morning, they'd work out, play the game in the afternoon, get on the bus, come back. They still hadn't eaten. So halfway home, they stopped at a hamburger joint. First time that happened, they looked at Larry and said, "Boy, you can't come in here. You want a hamburger, they'll put it in a paper sack for you. Go around the back and take your hat off and they'll give it to you." Well, Larry was Larry. Always he was Larry. Jackie exploded. Larry internalized. So he turned around. He wouldn't go to any back door. He got on the bus and he sat there. Out comes Gordon. And this is a true friendship. Gordon says, Dobes, that is what they call them, Dobes. You got to eat. You got to eat. I'll go in and I'll get you. So you're not going to get me crap. We're not. I'm not spending one thin dime with these bastards. And if you buy my lunch, you're going to be out the money because I'm not going to eat it. And that's what he did all through the trips. Now they're on the road. They're coming. Spring training is ending, right? They used to take a train with the New York Giants. Giants were in Phoenix. They share a train. And that was good because Monty Irvin, who had been his teammate before, was with the Giants. So they shared the train. And that was his second year because the first year he barely played and came late. There was no spring training. Now, Satchel's going to get signed by Bill Veeck. Page, I'm talking about. But he's not signed yet. So on this train, Larry and Doby, Larry and Monty, who are always very close, they share each other on the train, so they're not exactly alone. They get to Houston, and they're showered with epithets because all the exhibition games they stop and they play are through the South. So Monty says, Larry says to Monty, I'm going to fix these guys with my bat, not with my mouth. He hits the longest home run ever hit in Buffalo. They were the Houston Buffaloes, minor league, Buffalo Stadium. They put a plaque up there until they pulled it down. Doby goes up to the outfield, climbs in after the game, looks where the ball hit, and says, but when he told me the story, he said, because Doby was my friend too, he said, I didn't think a man could hit a ball that far. And when I wrote about it in the book, I said, it was special for Larry. For Larry and Monty, it was a giant middle finger pointed at what baseball had been.
Absolutely. Did he feel because he was the first one to do it in the American League, but Jackie Robinson had obviously, I would say, has gotten more press about what he's done, and you just pointed out that there were maybe more difficulties for him. Did he ever feel like maybe a little resentful, or not resentful, or just that his
I'll tell you
story?
what he told me. I'll tell you what he told me because that came into my head too. He said to me, uh, Jackie took all the crap. He was first. He stood up to it, and he deserved everything he got. But nobody ever said to me, we're going to be nice to the next Negro who comes along, but he didn't say Negro. So he understood. Now, the thing about Jackie is this. Branch Rickey, who I did not like for a lot of reasons, if we have time, I'll tell you, but he defended Jackie. He said, if you don't want to play with a black man, I will trade you. And he traded the most popular Dodger until that point in history, Dixie Walker, I think it was from Alabama. There was a petition and everything else. Well, he obliged them. He sent a bunch of them to Pittsburgh where they never make any money. They always finish last in Pittsburgh. But anyway, he sent them away. But the thing was, Jackie had a locker room because the guys were willing to play with him. And Jackie had a city. Jackie lived in
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn and never went back to LA. I mean, we visited, but he was a Brooklyn resident. The people would see him in the supermarket. They'd see him in the drugstore. They'd see him on the street. They'd see his kid and their kids would be in school together. So he had a hometown. Larry never had integration with the Indians until almost the end of his career in Cleveland. And he couldn't go to any, even on the road St. Louis and Washington were Jim Crow towns. Baltimore was not in the league yet. They were in the international. But all the hotels were Jim Crow. Didn't matter, the biggest hotels in all those. He couldn't stay with the team. I'm going to tell you a story about that. The end of that first train trip, 1949, his second year in the league. 1948, his second year in the league. He plays, I think, the town, and I actually, it was so many years later because Larry never told anybody. was so many years later that he wasn't quite sure. He thought it was Columbus, Georgia. He showered with beer cans, full beer cans thrown at him. He says, I'm out. I ain't staying out here. And he walks in. Woodrow says, where you going? He says, where you think I'm going? I'm not going out there. And he goes inside. He comes out early, showers, and there's a tall black man in a three-piece suit with a Phi Beta Kappa key. Says, Mr. Doby, can I speak to you? He said, if you're not going to throw anything at me, you can speak to me as long as you want. I got to wait to get out of here. He said, well, I'm the only black doctor in this town. And my wife agrees with me. We think it's terrible. You have to stay in a black boarding house by yourself. Remember, the Satchel hadn't joined them yet. By yourself, you're the only black in the league. And you're sitting there in your undershirt with a big cake of ice on the table and a little fan blowing at the cake of ice so you could try to get some relief from the heat. We want you to live with us. And they played those three exhibition games for about 4 or 5 years. And that's what he did. That family took him in. Now it's 3 days before the Hall of Fame induction, which we had a hell of a job getting them in, but I can tell you about that. But first, I got to tell you this. We're sitting there, and he's telling me we're having lunch at the Otisega Hotel. And he's telling me, I'm not quite sure about what I want to say at this induction. Now, I got to remember, Jackie got in as soon as he became eligible. Larry got in when he was 78 years old, and that was because their Veterans Committee had to put him in, and they weren't thrilled with the idea. In fact, I'll tell you, I'll interrupt myself to tell you this. I used to write a column every year saying, where are the veterans? What are they doing? And then he said to me, the year he got in, ironically, I think it was a coincidence. He thinks I helped get him in, but I loved him. He could think whatever he wanted. And he said, Jerry, I want you to stop writing about the Hall of Fame. I'm not getting in. And I'm not sitting around in my hands waiting for it. I'm going to be this week. I'm going out to Newcomb's condo in LA. I'll be out there. Let them look for me if they want to put me in. So I didn't pay attention to him. I'm going to write one more piece. It's the nastiest, strongest piece I can write about the Veterans Committee. Not about him, but about the veterans. And I say, no wonder I'm not surprised you guys wouldn't put him in, because some of you guys are the same sons of bitches who didn't want him to play one inning. I then copied it and mailed it to everybody on the committee. I got one response. The response started, Dear asshole, Monty and Yogi and I have been trying to get this man into the Hall of Fame for years. So you get off the couch, get off your fat ass and get us the votes we need to get him in. Signed, Ted Williams. That's a pretty good recommendation.
Wow.
And by the way, when he was his rookie year, when his second year, when he was an outfielder, he was an outfielder first year. He used to be able to throw the gloves on the outfield grass and run into the dugout, and you bend over and pick him up when you went out. So when he went to pick his up, somebody swatted him in the ass. He turned around. It was Williams. He said, "Hey, look, keep your chin up. You're going to be one of the best. I know it. I watch you swing." Okay, and he wasn't wrong. Anyway, that's how he gets in the Hall of Fame. I think Williams did it. Although no, Mark worked hard. I showed the Yogi, and he became friends for life after they both stopped playing. So it's now 2 days before. All right. I said, how do you feel now going back to the Hall of Fame? You had no chance to get in when you went to. He said, I never went to the Hall of Fame. For what? I'm not going to get in. Why would I go? I said, okay, don't make dinner plans tonight. I call up a guy named Jeff Idelson who ran the Hall of Fame. And I said, listen, what time are you closing tonight? At 8 o'clock. We don't want to. And so I said, would you open again at 9 for me? I want Larry to walk through that thing. Our wives, who were very friendly, will sit outside the lobby. We'll go alone. We did it. The most surreal thing I've ever done in my life. All the recordings are still playing inside the thing. Guys saying things. It's lit, but not fully lit. We're walking down the hall. We can hear our footsteps. We get to the Cleveland exhibit, and there are the 1948 Indians. And by the way, I made a lot of money on that team because my standard question in bars for the next 15 years was what black man hit the first major league home runs? And everybody said, Jackie, Jackie. And I made $5 off everybody who said Jackie. It was Larry Doby, 1948. And it helped win one of the games. Now, I want to finish this part of the story first. So now we're having lunch. He tells me about the doctor. And I said, that's a nice story. He said, no, it isn't. 5 years later, we're not going there anymore. We're flying. We're not taking a train. He gets murdered at a lunch counter sit-in. I said, for real? He said, absolutely. I go, he's heartbroken. I said, well, you got to tell that story tomorrow, the Hall of Fame. He said, no, it's not the time, not the. I said, it is. Everybody in that audience deserves to hear that story. White, black, or kids, particularly kids, they deserve to hear that story. He said, well, I would agree with you, but I will say, as you were when you said that Woodrow might not have hated me, just didn't want to have a black on a team because he thought he'd lose control. That you always had good theories, and you're always full of crap. I'm not doing it. He gave the greatest 6-minute speech I have, 6 minutes and 10 seconds to be precise. I timed it. I have ever heard in my life. He gets up there and he challenged the audience. He said, a lot of you people think that baseball hasn't done a good enough job. We don't have a black manager yet, and he was a candidate. But I challenge you to look at baseball and look at America. Who has gone further? Look at all the black players that are playing now. Who has gone further, baseball or America? And I'm going to tell you a little story, he said. When I hit that home run in 1948, the pitcher was Steve Gromek, number 4 on the pitching staff. All they wanted was 5, 6 good innings, right? He pitched a whole game. It ended. Doby runs across the locker room. He hit the home run. He hit the home run for Gromek. I mean, it worked out that way. Gromek looks at him. They put their arms around each other. You see the original picture, think maybe they're getting ready to kiss. They put their arms around each other like that. That picture played all through the South on the front page of newspapers that never had a black man and a white man hugging anywhere in their life, in the life of the newspaper. So he told them that. He said, America at that time really needed that picture. And I'm thrilled and I'm proud that I could be half of the team that gave it to him.
Wow.
So anyway, now Larry's gone. A congressman named Bill Pascrell from New Jersey, always respected, loved Larry. Everybody loved Larry. And he said, I'm going to get him the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. And they got it this year. Now, all those medals have the same front. It's a standard thing. You decide what's on the back. Well, Larry's gone. Larry Doby Jr. called up Steve Gromek Jr. And he said, would you be willing to sign a release? Because I think we need that picture on the back of the two guys hugging. Now, Larry Jr. is the head roadshow guy for Billy Joel. He builds the sets. So they're going to play in Detroit. Now, they lived at Hamtramck, the Gromeks. I'll put you in the front row in Detroit. The whole family. I don't care how many of it. He said, no, we're not going to do that. You're going to come and have dinner with us. We want to see you. We want to meet you. We want a connection. Larry's gone and our father is gone. We want to keep the connection alive. So he goes out there. It was his brother, not Steve, but the older brother. Uh, it was his house. The house was filled with cousins and uncles and aunts and cousins by the dozen. And all these, the house was lousy with Romex to meet Larry Jr. In 5 minutes, you would think they knew each other for life. The widow, Romack, was 92 years old. She put her arms around Junior and kissed him and said, "You don't know how much we want to meet you and how much we loved your dad." Well, anyway, that picture, that picture carried Larry. You know, the hell wasn't over just because Sato joined the team. In fact, he and Sato weren't even friends, which is another story. But anyway, uh, as a result of that, he never forgot the picture. He would keep it in his luggage. He would pull it out when things got bad again. Now, this is his third going into his third year. He would look at the picture and he'd feel great. The guy who got the heat for the picture was Gromack. Gromack lived in a small town. I don't think there was a single black person in a town called Hamtramck, Michigan. It was mostly, uh, today it's Muslim, but then it was mostly Polish immigrants and people like that, working day people. He had a guy that he played Little League Baseball with, American Legion Baseball with, high school baseball with. I don't know the guy's name. If I would, if I knew it, I would say it. He goes to the guy has a bar now. Gomek has won the fourth game of the World Series. He runs to the bar when he gets home to tell the guy, "Well, it feels so great." The guy walks right past him. Who owns the bar? So he points to one of the regulars. He says, "What's the matter with him?" The guy says, "The picture, the picture." Womack turns around. He's as much a hero in his way as Larry. Confronts the guy, and the guy said, "Well, you could have shaken his hand. You didn't have to almost kiss." He didn't say the Negro. He didn't say the colored guy. So you know what he said. Womack walked out of that bar. They lived in a small town till one of them died. Womack never spoke to him again. And the both, you hear the kids, they would, the picture was in both their fathers' den. They would walk, you know, Dad was a major leaguer, that's his glove, that's his picture, until they got much older. And then the fathers told the sons the history of the picture.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that it was the time to tell that story and not tell the doctor. He was right. Um, there's a picture in this book of him at the microphone. And across from is a picture for him sitting down after the speech and he's wiping tears out of his eyes. He felt it. And yet he was a guy you couldn't dislike. The first time they played the Yankees, okay, he comes to bat, probably as a pinch hitter because Woodrow only used him in 19 games the first year. He played one game in the field. He was a pinch runner and a pinch hitter other than that. And the first time he came to bat against the Yankees, Yogi says, "Hey, Larry, how you doing? How's your family?" And Larry says, "Uh-huh, uh-huh. No, but I mean, I really want to know how they are." He turns to the umpire and says, "Can you do something about this? I'm trying to hit a baseball." And he was having a lot of trouble. He hit 157 that year with a bad match. And the umpire said, "He talks to everybody," which Yogi did. Now he comes up again because I just must have been the game he played at first base because he played the whole game. He comes up again and he says, "You didn't tell me, how's your family?" And Larry says, "Will you make him shut up?" And the umpire says, you can't make him shut up." He said, "He talks to everybody." And after they both retired, their wives would make a big list of things they had to do around the house. They'd put the list in their pocket. They'd meet at the American Legion. They'd throw the list in the garbage. They'd watch baseball and they would laugh. And the wives never knew where they were.
Oh my goodness, what amazing stories. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I can't wait for people to hear
I don't know
about
if you have
this.
time, but I will tell you, he only came to blows once.
Hmm.
I was 8 years The very first year, he slid into second base, and the shortstop spit tobacco juice in Larry's eyes. In Brooklyn, when Ray Chapman, that wasn't Ray, I forget his first name, Chapman was the manager of the Phillies. He's standing on the dugout steps and he's yelling, nigger, nigger, shine my shoes. Eddie Stanky, who was not a very nice person, but he won a lot of points with me. He was the second baseman with the Dodgers that year. He ran across the field and tried to take a swing at Chapman. Jackie had that. Finally, there was a pitcher, I won't name him, it doesn't serve any purpose. Whoever he pitched for, he threw the ball behind Doby's head. Now, my dad was a minor league ball player, and he explained to me the reflex action when your pitch is coming in, so you pull back. So if you're throwing behind a guy, you're trying to hit him. And finally, we're playing one game, pitch gets away from him. The catcher goes to catch it. Doby's hit back. The pitcher comes running down the cover home plate. They each have something to say to each other. Doby said, that's it. Left hook, boom, down, 8, 9, 10. He's on the ground. Now the Yankees rush out for their teammate. Larry used to laugh. He spent the beginning of that fight with Moose Gowan on his back. I mean, that's like carrying around a 500-pound weight. And Moose Gowan's trying to punch him in the neck. And they're on the ground. And between the legs and everything, he sees his dugout. He was playing with the White Sox then. Walt Lopo, obviously white, was leading the charge. And when Larry told me the story finally, he didn't want to tell it early. He said, after 8, 10 years in the league, I finally had teammates. In St. Louis, Jim Crow Town, there was a guy standing in the front row with a megaphone. Nigger, 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 he's in the batting code. That didn't bother me. I heard that long before I saw this man. Then he said, that's the uppity one. But you should see his wife, Helen. She spells her name Helyn. And let me tell you what she did for me in my hotel room last night. Leaves the bat where it is, one leg over the railing. He's flying backwards through the air. And on top of him is a bench coach and a pitching coach, one guy, did both jobs, named Bill McKechnie, who always liked Larry. He saved his career because he said, Dobes, you go in that stand, you'll never play again. But you don't go in that stand because you don't understand. This is the American League. These people hate your color. They hate you. They hate what you stand for. And if you go in that, you'll never play again, but we'll never get another black man for 10 years. So stay where you are. And just before he left after this season, McKechnie came over to him and said, listen, you didn't make this team. They're not giving you a chance. You got to go home, learn to play the outfield. We got terrible outfielders. Learn to play the outfield. Find a book. Larry goes home and he's got high school kids hitting him fungos in the snow. It didn't help, but he's trying. He goes to the public library and gets a book, How I Played Right Field for the Yankees by Tommy Henrik. So
Wow.
off a book and a bunch of high school kids fungos, he's going to go back and demand to play the outfield. Well,
This
he
is
didn't
amazing.
demand anything of the guy, of that manager, but he said, I think I could be more use to this team if you give me a shot in the outfield.
Awesome.
Bill Veeck, the smartest, and his heart was always in the right place. Always in the right. He wasn't branch quicker. He cared about the people he signed. Okay, what he signed Tris Speaker, who was a former, he's the greatest center fielder ever before DiMaggio and Larry and those other guys came along. He made him a goodwill ambassador, but he took one look at his front office saying, Bill, tie a can to this guy, send him to the minors, cut him, do something. He's never going to make this team. He says to Chris Speaker, you got a new job. You're going to teach outfield 101 to Larry Doby. You're going to teach it all spring. Now, what he didn't know, and Larry didn't know, is that he was from Humboldt, Texas, where he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. They got along so well because their lives were so different when they would talk about where they came from or what it was like, they were learning something from each other. He turned Doby into this kind of outfield. All-star game. Larry Doby's in center and Mickey Mantle is in left.
Wow. That's
And,
amazing.
and,
And
I'm,
like
and
I
you
said,
know about the catch, the great catch that Willie made.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you about a better catch that that guy standing behind you made. They won more games than any team in the history of baseball in 1954. They had a pitching staff never assembled like this. And they lost the World Series to the Giants. Now, in the opening of that game, they're tied, eighth inning. Willie plays shallow all the time. He says nobody could hit a ball over his head. He sprints backwards because Vic Lurch hit one that might be over the state of New Jersey and out of it. He's running, he reaches, it doesn't reach back. It's a football catch, basket football catch, right? I happen to be home from Korea. The government sent me on a nice trip at their expense for the Korean War. So I'm home. I'm in the business now, but I'm not, I'm working on a desk. My cousin gives me, my father had always wanted to play for the Giants when he was in minor league. Never could make it. But we were Giant fans in my house. My cousin, who was a Giant fan, buys me a seat and one seat for him, right center field. I'm sitting where the catch is made. I've
Wow.
never seen anything like it except for one thing, which I didn't. I went back and looked at the films when I found out. Larry is playing shallow uh, against, I don't know who hit the ball, but Larry sprints back to the wall, reaches in the stands, and he's above he's off the ground, makes the catch, comes down to the bullpen awning, lands on his elbow, and holds the ball.
Wow.
Dizzy Dean, a great pitcher, an ungrammatical announcer who once said he slid into second base. Dizzy Dean said after that catch, he was doing the game of the week. He said, I never saw this Doby before. But if I'm that pitcher, I'm giving him a month of my salary because he saved his ass. Greatest catch I ever saw, Dean said.